Good afternoon, everyone. Is this working? Okay, great. Good afternoon. I'm Harris County District Attorney Kim Ogg, and I welcome media to the CJC and the 12th floor of our District Attorney's office. We're here today to talk about the progress that this office has made in reducing our criminal case backlog. And what we've got is a 100-day report for you. So the first 100th day of 2023 was Monday. And we're going to talk about that today. I'm joined by many members of our staff and also by the Virapins, a couple who lost their son to murder several years ago. I'll be joined by some of my bureau chiefs here. We'll introduce each as they come up. So we're here to talk about a criminal case backlog. What is that? Well, a criminal case backlog is the number of cases that are left unresolved on December 31st of each year. Remember, we file about 90 to 100,000 cases a year. So to reduce our criminal backlog, we start with the number that were left from the previous year, and then we begin filing new cases on January 1. We do that 365 days a year. So remember, to reduce the backlog, you have to work, our team has to work at 100% plus. Now, that's what a backlog is defined as. Let me tell you what it really is. These are just a few cases that have been tried in 2023. Marcus Renard Coleman, 30, documented Houston gang member, sentenced just yesterday to 45 years in prison for the 2016 murder of a childhood friend. Time between crime and conviction, 6.5 years. Abdul Rahman Khan, 27, sentenced last Thursday to 50 years in prison and a $10,000 fine for murder for the fatal shooting of 33-year-old Peter Pina, a tattoo artist at the Electric Chair Tattoo and Piercing Shop on Richmond. Murder June 14th, 2016. Time between crime and conviction, 6.5 years. Shabora Latrice Thomas, who drowned her two children, ages 5 and 7, August 12th, 2016, pleaded guilty to 2 counts of murder February 27th in exchange for 40 years in TDC. Time between crime and conviction, more than 6 years. I could go on, but I think you get the idea. So we are grateful for the increase in jury trials and our movement in the courthouse, and we have a long way to go. Now, a criminal case backlog is like a cancer. Left untreated, it will grow until it eventually strangles its host. In this case, the justice system. And when the system fails to resolve cases timely, and when justice is delayed, families of crime victims suffer. Prosecution has problems with delay as well. Witnesses disappear, they're killed, they go to prison, they become fearful and change their testimony. Evidence can be lost. Police, lab techs move. Many difficulties ensue in the pursuit of justice when it is delayed. And for those on bail, the longer a high-risk accused defendant is out on bail on the street, the longer everyone else is at risk. So we have many important public policy reasons for attacking this backlog, just like we would attack a body sick with cancer. Now, our justice system is like an assembly line. Each component, from the police to the prosecution to the courts to the jails, we all have our part. And so today, we're here to discuss our part, what we've done, and the results that we have reaped. As of Monday, the 100th day of 2023, our criminal case backlog has been reduced by more than 21% since its zenith in June of 2021. And our historical criminal case backlog chart shows you this terrific reduction, this important reduction from 145,000 or so down to 114,000. And active cases currently on docket before judges in our prosecutors' hands, not fugitives, people who are on the docket. We have reduced that number to 69,533, almost an even split, 38,000 felonies, 30,000 misdemeanors with some change. It represents terrific work by many of the lawyers, the investigators, and our civilian employees here at the DA's office. We've taken some very purposeful measures to attack our backlog. The first was a triage program, overtime. We did not, in spite of the increase in population, receive an increased budget that is significant. We did not receive increased staffing that was significant. Even still, we have worked our current staff nights and weekends for overtime, and the result of that has been that they have been able to triage, just like in an emergency room, the low-end cases to see if we can reach some alternative disposition or solution for nonviolent cases. And it has left more time during the workday to triage our most violent crimes. Now, how are we, with our part in the system, to prioritize violent crimes? We don't control the scheduling of the courts. We don't control the commission of crimes and the investigative process by police. And so what I did was I took the good ideas of many of my employees. A group got together, and their idea was a homicide division. And it was a great idea. And what we did is we have taken 12 of our most experienced and skilled prosecutors, 6 of our most experienced and skilled investigators, and we have assigned them all of the capital murders, many of the capital murders that were pending, and all of the new capital murders. Some still go to specialty divisions, but by and large, this is the group handling, working up, and pushing these homicide cases to trial. And I'd just like to ask everybody here on the homicide, in the homicide division, to please raise your hand. And if you will, everybody else, will you please join me in a round of applause? They certainly didn't do it alone. There are many other divisions represented here, but to give you an idea of their success just this year, the number of murder cases, capital and first-degree murder, that have been brought to conclusion are 119. Now, if you look at our chart of, and I don't know if it's up here, I don't think it is, but our pending capital murders and murders right now, it's like a city of murderers. We have reduced it from 1,875 to 1,811. Remember, we're filing new murders as well as reducing the backlog of murders. So you're always having to work at more than 100% to get to affect this reduction. I think that the success of the trial bureaus, and to speak to that, we have Nathan Beadle and we have Denise Nichols, misdemeanor and felony, both working extremely hard with their teams in court daily to achieve these reductions. What I want to say is that our collective success is remarkable when you consider that the Census Bureau just last weekend announced that the Harris County region is the second fastest growing region in the United States in terms of population growth. And yet our staff and budget have not been increased proportionately. And what that does is make me very, very proud of the commitment of every employee of this office who's dedicated themselves to seeing that justice is done sooner rather than later, who are committed to bringing faster and more complete resolution to crime victims like you will hear from in just a moment. At this time, I'd like to introduce Nathan Beadle, Bureau Chief of our Misdemeanor Division, just tell you a little bit about how they've been working in our county criminal courts at law to reduce the backlog. Nathan?
Thank you, Kim. Can everybody hear me? I was asked to describe what we do in general real quickly. We handle some very routine cases that you're probably familiar with. Assault family member cases, thousands of them. DWI cases, thousands of them. Several other crimes such as burglary of a motor vehicle and that sort. I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the numbers specifically that Kim raised. Currently today we have 30,000 and change cases that are active. I have 48 people to handle those cases. That's the resources that we have on a daily basis to handle some of these public safety related issues that there are many. At the height of COVID, we had 44,000 cases in June of 2021. So that's roughly about a 14,000 case reduction. How did this take place? This took place by hard work. That's what it takes. When you have 48 people working their regular shifts, then working 4-hour shifts, sometimes multiple days a week, that's both in the felony and misdemeanor level, you are burning these extremely competent professionals to their core. And that's how it was done. And that's how we're going to continue to do it. I'm not aware of another major metropolitan area or county that has a lower caseload at the beginning of COVID, after COVID than at the beginning. But I can tell you the misdemeanor division now has 30,000 cases and we had 33,000 at the beginning of COVID. That's historic. I've been told by my boss that I need to get that down to Hurricane Harvey levels. And so we're going to keep working. The triage program, which by the Chief of Staff has given us specific criteria of what we're going to attack first. The older cases, the cases that have been languishing around a little bit longer than we'd like them to. That's our focus, both in the felony and the misdemeanor levels. What's it going to take in the future? More hard work, more ability to actually eke more performance out of our employees, which, by the way, is difficult to do as it is now. What is the benefit to us resolving more cases? It benefits the victims, first of all, that we're able to resolve these cases. It benefits the public when somebody's held accountable for their actions for a public safety related issue. And it makes the whole community safer when we can do that. Thank you.
Actually, I'd like everybody to help me thank Nathan and his entire misdemeanor prosecutorial team. Please welcome Denise Nichols, who's speaking for the Bureau Chief of the Felony Trial Bureau. Denise herself is the Division Chief of our Sex Crimes Division dealing with children. Denise?
Thank you, Kim. Can everyone hear me okay? As Kim mentioned, my name is Denise Nichols. I am the Division Chief of the Crimes Against Children Division. What we do on a daily basis is prosecute cases involving our youngest citizens of Harris County, our children, who have been sexually abused, normally by someone they know, someone they love, someone they trust, frequently someone who's part of their family. And when we deal with these victims on a daily basis and we talk to the families, the parents, the children, we see that what they tell us is how their lives are placed on hold while the criminal cases are pending. For most of these kids, they try very hard not to think about the abuse they endured, and then for us to have to come back 5, 6, 7, 10 years later and ask them to relive those experiences in a court in front of the person who abused them, it's really, really traumatic, and it's very difficult. Backlog for victims just means their lives are on hold. They don't get the kind of closure that they need to put the abuse behind them and move forward. So one of the things that we've really tried to do in our division, as well as in the Felony Trial Bureau as a whole, is to get more cases to trial. Because for our really violent offenders, they are not going to just agree to go to prison. So we have to go to trial. We have to bring jurors in and ask the citizens of Harris County to hold these people accountable. And as we've been able to increase the amount of trials that we've been trying, we've been able to do that. So thank you, Kim.
I owe all of this group a great deal of thanks because they are working day and night for people like the woman I'm about to introduce to you. I met Barbara Vierpen shortly after her son had been murdered at a local fast food restaurant. There are many problems that crime victims' families face that ordinary people just don't think about. And I had the opportunity to assist the Vierpen family while they were awaiting trial. Little did I know that once I became DA, we would have resolved the case and Barbara would be sharing her story with the public because the public needs to see the faces of real people. This is not just about paper. These cases are about real people, and we've prioritized murders because of families like the Vierpens. Barbara?
Thank you, Kim. Thank you, everyone. My name is Barbara Vierpen. My son was murdered on 5/29 of My son was murdered on 5/29 in 2009. He worked, 19-year-old, he worked from 17 years old. I was going to school to assist me and his father, who was in the back there, and his other brother, so he can have an education. And I'm proud to say that that brother who he assists is in the Air Force. My son, Edward Ricky Vierpen, was only 19 when he was murdered. He worked at Popeyes on 5/29, and it was a horrible thing. He was killed on 5/2/09. He worked on 5/29. So those numbers might be lucky to some people, but it was not lucky for us on that day. It feels like this happened just yesterday. He has a family that he loved. He's a loving person. He worked so hard to make sure that everyone is okay. He loved all his cousins. He loved little kids, and he would do anything for little children. When we got the news and for the trial, it took us 5 years, and I want to thank him for that. It took us 5 years to go to trial. 5 years for a family is, I would say, is terrible, is horrible. I do not want to see anyone, any family, to take this long or have to go through this to be 5 years to go to trial. I'm hoping and I'm praying that the initiative that Kim and the staff are taking is going to go forward and everything will move smoothly, so everything can go faster. The trials can go faster. Families should not be waiting that long. We are living, myself, my husband, my kids, and family are living in, like I said, like yesterday. Nothing goes away. It does not matter how many years. It's going to be May 2nd is going to be 14 years. And it's like 4 days or 14 days. There is not a day that myself or my husband doesn't cry for him. There's not a day that my son, who lives here, whenever he comes over, first thing he's going to go and look at the picture in the back with him and his two brothers. So things are horrible. And I don't want to see any family go through this. I do not want to see any family to take this long for trial. I'm just hoping this can go through as a smooth process. Families can get what they needed. It took us over 5 years for us to get what we needed. Hopefully, it is something that we were looking for, and I must say yes. I do not want to see anybody go through this. I forgive whoever did it. I forgive everyone. Life has to go on, but families should not go through this trauma. I do hope, Kim, that whatever you are looking for and you and your staff are working for will be there soon. It's going to be a smooth process, and I know it's going to be there. Thank you.
Well, I can assure you, Barbara, that we're working for you and others like you. And it's very important to me that the public know how hard our prosecutors and investigators do work for their safety, for the justice of the accused. You know, delay doesn't benefit the accused either. And for those who the evidence isn't sufficient or who are eventually acquitted, they wait as long as the victim. So delay doesn't benefit anyone. It hurts us all. I'm very, very proud of our staff, and I wanted to thank them personally for the hard work that they have done. This is a major accomplishment. Cases can only be resolved 3 ways: through plea, through trial, or dismissal. And this group, along with several hundred others, work every day, 365 days a year, to make sure that we can bring justice to the victims, the accused, and the community in every single case. With Senate Bill 402 having passed the Senate with a 30-0 vote, we hope that our legislative push to the senators, carried by Senator John Whitmire, will pass the House and shortly become law, because murder and capital murder trials should be prioritized, just like child abuse cases are now, just like domestic violence cases are now. That's why I created this squad, so we're looking forward to a successful bill passage as well. Thank you all. That concludes this media interview in English, but not in Spanish. Ruben Perez is our Special Crimes Bureau Chief. I hadn't forgotten you, but it wasn't a very smooth transition. So, Ruben Perez, Bureau Chief, Special Crimes, Spanish Media.
Thank you, Kim. Gracias, Kim. I'm going to start off in English for just a split second, okay? Ms. Barbara, on behalf of all of us, thank you for your patience, your support, and all of us professionals who've been in this line of work for so many years and dedicate our lives, our careers to this process. Still, thank you for your patience and your support. I'm going to transition to Spanish. Mi nombre es Rubén Pérez, soy jefe, soy fiscal y soy jefe de la División de Crímenes Especiales. De parte de la fiscal del distrito del condado de Harris County, vamos a anunciar sobre los éxitos de la Oficina de la Reducción de la Acumulación de los Casos Penales. Como dijo la fiscal Kemak, la acumulación de casos penales es como un cáncer. Si no se trata, sigue creciendo. Nuestra oficina hemos estado luchando para reducir la acumulación de estos casos penales. La fiscal Kemak lanzó la División de Homicidios el año pasado. También las fiscales trabajamos por la noche y los fines de semana, todos los días, 7 días a la semana, para implementar un programa de clasificación y triaje. Y hoy tenemos buenas noticias. Al partir del lunes, el día 100 de 2023, la acumulación de casos penales se redució a más de 21% desde su máximo en 2021. Este éxito es más notable cuando uno se da cuenta que se hizo sin ningún aumento en personal, sin un aumento de presupuesto financiero. Seguimos trabajando con las mismas personas, los mismos propuestos, sin aumento de nada. La oficina de censo, como dijo Kemal, anunció al fin de esta semana pasada que la región del condado de Harris es el segundo más rápido creciendo en la población de Estados Unidos, pero nuestro personal, como les dije, y el presupuesto se hizo mantenido prácticamente iguales. En otras palabras, siguió la población creciendo, los crímenes violentos creciendo, si seguimos trabajando con las mismas personas y el mismo presupuesto. Le quiero dar gracias a todos, como dijo Nathan Beadle, como dijo Denise Nickel, como dijo Kemal. Estamos trabajando para asegurar asegurar el público. Vamos a seguir trabajando. Como dijo Kim, si se dura mucho un caso, no es justo para la víctima ni para el acusado. Y otra vez le voy a dar las gracias a Ms. Barbara y a su esposo. Le voy a decir en español otra vez gracias por todo su apoyo, todo su apoyo en esperar que se haga juicio para su hijo. And again, Barbara, I'm going to finish this in English. Thank you again for your patience, your support, and finally justice was done for your son, and we look forward to bringing justice to all victims of crime in Harris County. Thank you. Gracias.
All right, we can open it up.
When we're looking at the criminal case backlog right here, the 20% decrease, like you mentioned, from 2021 to current, obviously that's a great decrease. Is there a reason, though, we don't see a breakdown from felony to misdemeanor? And in this triage program, we know, as you mentioned, that's hitting those misdemeanor cases. So are we seeing a decrease with felony cases?
So, great question. We have that chart, and we can get it to you after this press conference. Why did we not have it up? Too many charts.
Given
That's the only reason. Just a second. The most important thing you can see from our case filings, we have gone from an office that in the teens really filed more misdemeanors than felonies. Through the mental health diversion program and marijuana diversion program, that low-hanging fruit, as they would say, is not being filed. And so we gained ground, which gave us time to work on our more violent cases. But with Harvey and the pandemic, it really zenithed the massive caseload. So what you see in our case filings is that we're just filing about the same amount of felonies now as misdemeanors. But we've reduced our active, to answer you, our active felonies are down to 38,000 plus change, and our active misdemeanors are down to 30,000 plus change. So there's been a significant reduction in both. The felonies are harder to move because, just as Ms. Nichols stated, it's difficult for us to conclude cases where there's a life sentence as a possibility to get somebody to plead to an appropriate amount of time. And so we have to try more of those cases than we do the misdemeanors. But it has been day and night, weekend work for everyone. And the reason I created the homicide team, we are filing more violent felonies now than ever before. Our filings for murders and capital murders have literally doubled since 2019. We've gone from approximately 250 cases filed in 219 cases of murder and capital murder to 505 in 2022. 505 capital murder cases and murder cases. And you may wonder, are the solve rates better at the local PDs? We don't track that, but they appear to be, with the additional evidence from video cams, body cams, cell phones. Murderers and serious violent offenders are being caught faster and more often. There is less chance than ever for violent criminals to actually get away with it. And so it, in effect, doubles the tragedy. They're going to get caught. and yet the killing continues.
And really quickly, with that 21% reduction, can you tell us how many of those cases were dismissed or what they were disposed of? I think that some people might wonder, are some cases just being cleared to be cleared?
Some cases are not being cleared just to be cleared. We take a duty, we take an oath to follow the law, and we seek justice in every single case. Sometimes that's a dismissal, sometimes that's a conviction, sometimes that's an alternative sentence, which, by the way, often ends up in dismissal. So I can't give you this breakdown, but I can tell you I looked at the murder stat. I can't give you the actual breakdown of what became of every case. It's just too many. I can't, and we don't quite track it that way. But I can tell you, for example, in the murders, we've got it looks like about well, I've got the numbers. Let me tell you what they are. Out of 119 murder and capital murder cases that have been resolved, 68 were resolved by conviction. 6 were no billed by grand juries, 4 were acquitted by juries, and 41 were dismissed. I looked at the reason for the dismissal of murders. The reason was generally the defendant pled in another case or account. The case was refiled. There were some, it's a much smaller percentage, insufficient evidence. But our dismissals are a broad category. So, for example, when we look at misdemeanors, sometimes we're criticized by some people for dismissing a lot of cases. Many of those are diversions, which I promised as part of my platform for this administration, and which, of course, are supported by many of the same people saying, gosh, look at your dismissal rate. So why cases are dismissed is very important. And we do have that breakout for 2022.
Are you seeing more now compared to 2021 dismissals?
No. No, actually, as more people are being caught for these violent crimes, there's a lot of evidence against them. What happens is in these murders and capital murders, when too much time passes, the witnesses disappear. And so that is the primary cause, some destruction of the evidence, that kind of thing. Those are the primary causes for the cases, the meritorious murders that are actually dismissed. The good news about that is there is no statute of limitations on murder.
What other solutions is the county looking into to try to help reduce the backlog?
You'd have to ask the county.
Kim, given the backlog reduction, what is your average caseload for a prosecutor, and how does that compare with peer jurisdictions, say Cook County, Los Angeles County?
So, in spite of our tremendous population growth, this office has not been grown accordingly or appropriately. So we are the lowest staffed office of the top 20 largest DA's offices in the country. Our caseloads are terrible. Our homicide prosecutors carry how many cases? 71 capital murders, 100 murders or capital murders, some of them. But our number 3 prosecutors in our trial courts sometimes carry 1,000 cases. And, you know, this burns people out. Compared to the public defender's office, who has a caseload maximum of 150, unfortunately, we haven't been afforded that same professional limit. We need it. Nationally, we need limits to prosecutorial caseloads, because just like in policing, it's difficult to recruit people into this profession when they know there's not going to be a work-life balance. There's one reason that we become prosecutors, and it's people like Barbara. We do it because we want to help, and we want to make our community safer, not because it's an easy or glamorous job.
Kim, I want to add a follow-up question. We've gotten word of a pending policy change regarding drug cases amounting to 4 grams or less of a suspected controlled substance. The arrest would not happen until after the substance is tested. Will that give you any breathing room on intake, or what's the reasoning behind that?
The lab backup is the reason. We plan an announcement next week. Yesterday's memo was just an announcement to law enforcement of a pending change. Some some knew about that already. HPD and the Sheriff's Department we had met with. So we sent out that memo to give everyone a heads up. I don't believe that this change in drug policy is going to have a major impact on our caseload. It will simply delay the timing. But what it will do is shorten the time between the case filing and the disposition of the case, meaning people will not languish in jail as long, cases will not crowd up dockets as long, and we will continue to prioritize the serious violent crimes over those cases.
You know, we're always looking at a worst-case scenario. Are you concerned about not jailing some of those suspects and them reoffending during the testing or process?
Well, if there's a public safety threat, there's an exception to the policy, and we'll talk about it more next week. It's not a backlog reduction strategy, and that's what this meeting was about. So I plan to have a separate news conference on that. But it will change some things for the better. We think it will shorten the time to case disposition significantly.
When looking at the courtrooms, you have some judges who have clearance rates that are more than 100%, and then you have other judges as low as 78%. How are we making sure that judges are all held to the same standard when it comes to this clearance rate?
Well, how are you all making sure that all judges are held to the same standard for a clearance rate? We don't supervise or have any control over our judges, but what we do have control over is the work that our prosecutors do first. And we're focused on violent crimes. So you do have jurists that have much higher dockets than others. They control that with their trial schedule, the number of cases that they dispose of, the hours they keep, and the number of resets that they allow criminal defendants. We can only control our readiness for trial.
Do you think those judges with the low clearance rates are partially to blame for this?
Well, you know, blame is useless. What we want is everyone doing their part, and we came to tell you our part. But I think those are good questions for jurists, and I would encourage you to ask them. I just don't speak for them.
Following Greg's question, in regards to the drug lab testing, what kind of impact will that have on the RIC court, which provides treatment for some of those drug offenders?
Well, I think we'll have more to tell you about that next Wednesday.
Has
But
that
I
been
mean,
scoped out at least in ahead of time? Like what kind of impact that will have?
well, people will continue to be treated. All possession cases under a certain amount will continue to receive treatment. All we've done is change the timing of the filing.
Another question.
Yes, ma'am.
And this has been a high-profile case, Lydell Grant, and when he was acquitted, and when he was exonerated, and you were vocal about that at that time, but now, of course, he's been rearrested on a different murder charge. Do you have any comment about that?
My first comment is to the family of this most recent victim. We share your anguish. I especially feel the disappointment of a man who got a second chance after a wrongful conviction in a real murder. Aaron Shearhorn was the victim. The actual murderer was found, sentenced, and Mr. Grant was freed, even receiving compensation for his wrongful conviction. And to carry a gun and to use drugs, he's been stopped for that, and now to murder someone is, it's just, it's not frustrating, it's just tragic. And I'm just sickened by his actions on behalf of the family of this victim. An exoneration is based on the facts of that case. He was innocent of Aaron Shearhorn's murder. Someone else was guilty of it. But in this case, we've accused him, and we intend to bring the full force of the law down on Mr. Grant.
The remuneration, as it were, that he received in the wrongful conviction in the Shearhorn case, if he is convicted in this most recent road rage murder, what happens to that $600,000+?
You know, it's my understanding that he remains entitled to that money, but it is also perfectly plausible to see the prospect of a civil case by the victim's family in this most recent murder against Mr. Grant for monetary damages. While we will prosecute and seek his incarceration for the murder, that family has a potential opportunity at civil recovery through a civil suit.
And then you noted the tremendous amount of overtime your homicide squad has put in on these cases, 4+ hours on top of their daily shifts.
No, that's not homicide. That's all of our trial lawyers, trial bureau,
every
every.
the folks here, every last one of you.
I have to live with them.
Well, is there any? I mean, did they get a little overtime? Some time
Yes,
off? That
they get overtime pay, but let me say something. They get overtime pay. But I don't think that's why our team is working so hard. We are working for the Barbara Verpins of this community. And there's just no one's salary in here. They could all make more in private practice. There's no question. So they are all working this program, and I fear their burnout. I lose people because of the burnout, because of the caseload, because of the salaries, because of the lack of competitiveness with the private market. And what I would tell you is it all comes down to heart.
How long do you think it's going to take to see like a significant dent in the backlog with them working so long? You guys have, decreased it 21% since 2021. So what's it going to take to see, a big number and them not working so hard?
So just respectfully, 21% is significant to us.
Right, I get you. I'm saying,
Okay.
and
And it's significant to victims.
Right, I'm just
But
when you look
we
at these
never get
numbers-
down to zero. What we're trying to achieve is pre-Harvey levels, and we're not there yet.
In a perfect world, what would you like to see the timeline from crime to conviction be?
18 months in a felony, a year in a misdemeanor case. In the old days, in the 90s, that was about the timetable. And that was the timetable for many years. Where we've become so disproportionate is in the last few years. Huge population increase, giant spike in crime, and no increase really in the size of this office. Opposition by Commissioners Court in that regard in the face of thousands and thousands of crime victims. And we hope that that will change in this next and coming budget year.
How concerned are you that the additional hours that your staff is putting in, the amount of hours, the amount of workload they're having to, what are your concerns with how long it's going to be before they start making mistakes that end up with, trials overturned and, convictions overturned? And
Well, we're all human, but of course we strive valiantly against mistakes. This is a detail-oriented business. Our community gets a lot right. We trust juries, we trust grand juries. And, I've been the district attorney now 6 years, 4 months, and 12 days. And I will tell you that I have not seen intentional misconduct, mistakes that I had to explain to a family. It's happened, but honestly, I am not recollecting them now. These people work hard. They're talented, they're skilled, and they bring that to public service. And so while I wanted to tell the community, I really hate this one. While I came to tell the community about the good news, I also came to thank all of these people and for them to carry this thanks from me and from our community back to the rest of our staff. Thank you all very much. Oh, excuse me, go ahead.
Sorry, I missed it. You had the capital murder rate cases. You said in 2022 it was 505, in 2019 it was 200 something.
250. A 100% increase
In filing.
in 3 years and 4 months in filing. Now, the number of homicides, the number of dead bodies, highest in 30 years was 2021. We can provide those stats to you. They're our stats. We collect them from the police departments and from the sheriff's department, and we compile it, and we also utilize the medical examiners numbers. So It's not UCR stats, but we know that 2021, more people were killed in Harris County in that year than ever before since 1994. 2022 was slightly down from 2021. This year, we've already had 100. Does anybody remember what the last 123?
33.
This year, by the 100th day, 133 Houstonians have been murdered in Harris County. As you all know, the murders occur, the case is investigated, and the case is filed later, sometimes way later. That's why it's hard to tell you what the disposition of all the cases is. They're just rolling too quickly.
Oh, and I'm
All right.
sorry, when you gave the 119 capital murders and then the dispositions,
Yeah.
what's that time frame from 119 capital?
That's just this year.
Oh, this is this 2020.
2023. In just this year, we have resolved 119 capital murders or murders.
Okay, this is the backlog then.
That's right.
Yeah. Okay, sorry.
That is the backlog. You're right. Because they wouldn't be new murders.
Kim, what's your total staff size?
Our total staff size is a little over 800 if you include grant positions and a few ARPA positions. Right now, we have 323 prosecutors staffed on general fund. Lowest in the United States, top 20 cities.
And 800 staff, that's prosecutors and assistants and everybody? Or all?
800 plus.
800.
Prosecutors, 330, what was it, 333? Yeah, 333 on general fund positions. We have about 30 more in either ARPA or grant funds.
Okay, but 800 is not all lawyers. 800.
No, ma'am.
Yeah.
I wish. I wish. That'd be Cook County.
Can you send us that breakdown that you mentioned of the felony
Yes.
cases as well?